Hello, this is GeoTechland. Let's take a look at what is new in the world of tech. A leaked copy of Windows 11 has been spreading around and it reveals a new UI, start menu, and a lot more. It does look like a much nicer looking UI, although it still has a lot of inconsistencies. There's a lot of UI elements that are from like Windows 7, from even Windows 95, or just like an older version of Windows. But I think the real interesting thing about the UI reveal is that it does remind me of some particular OSs, like the design and UI that you see on Deepin and Zorin OS. So it kind of makes me wonder, did Windows get inspiration from these OSs? But then again, a lot of people feel that Deepin and maybe even Zorin kind of copied macOS, and then macOS copied them a little bit. And so they're all kind of sharing from each other in some ways. But otherwise, I think it's very interesting to sort of keep track of what Windows is doing, because I think they're the biggest competition to Linux. You know, they're still the dominant OS, and I always felt that if Linux is going to have a chance against Windows on the desktop, it has to do things better than they do. So Linux generally has been better for security, and for quite some time now, Linux has been better in terms of UI, at least for some of the OSs, compared to Windows here. And so we got to show that Linux is not only secure, but it could also be beautiful and very user-friendly. And it just goes to show that when the OS itself is free and people from all over the world can make contributions, you get cool things a lot faster. One example I think about is Linux had options for dark mode years before Mac OS, and I think even Windows adopted dark mode. So Linux on desktop is always on the cutting edge. Facebook extends Trump ban, ends exemptions for politicians' posts. So Facebook had a rule, and I think Twitter also, if certain politicians violated their terms of service, they wouldn't ban them because they would deem their accounts newsworthy accounts. But of course, Facebook, along with other social media sites, banned Trump. I think the question of allowing someone like Trump back, or even banning him in the first place, is a very interesting topic with many different layers to it. It was my stance for a while that unless you're engaging in direct threats of violence or anything illegal, then you should be allowed on a platform. Then there was the argument against that says, well, if it's indirect threats of violence, or a person is inciting even indirectly violence, then those users should get deplatformed or banned. My stance now, at least, is that even though I could agree that some moderation needs to happen, and I think it's valuable to assess whether a person is causing social harm and therefore be banned from a platform, I don't want that in the hands of private corporations and give them a lot of power to abuse it. And this is why I prefer decentralized social media. I think it's the best balance between platforms having their own policies and the users deciding by supporting these sort of independent platforms with their financial support. But let me know your thoughts. What would you do here? If someone was causing some harm, what would be the appropriate amount of time to banning that user? Should they even be allowed back into the community? It's an interesting question for sure. Speaking of Facebook, Facebook plans its first smartwatch for next summer with 2 cameras and a heart rate monitor. So the reason why this caught my attention is because Facebook is probably one of the worst when it comes to tracking you and data mining you. And they're going to release a smartwatch that has 2 cameras. And the reason why they're adding cameras is that it seems like they may want to have its own standalone platform that's not dependent on, or it's not too dependent on Android or iPhone. Because Facebook already doesn't like that they're at the mercy of the App Store and the Google Play Store. Facebook has a lot of money and power, and they're going to throw a lot of resources into this smartwatch, and they can take a loss on not just the smartwatch, but this makes me think about them buying Oculus, how they were able to lower the price significantly and even take a loss because they have a lot of money at their disposal, and it kind of ruined VR to some degree. For those privacy conscious people, this is definitely going to be a hard pass. Apple's Tim Cook says sideloading is not in the best interest of the user. They're arguing that if they allow other third-party app stores on their platform, they're going to have their own rules and it's going to be worse for privacy. And to a degree, he might be right. I could imagine someone very gullible online sees something and it's like, oh, you can get this app for free, but only on this platform. And people go onto that platform, they don't know what they're installing, what it's tracking, because they don't know what that random third-party app store might be doing. And so you want a trusted app store that you can know either is not violating your privacy, it's not data mining you. So there are some good arguments for having one centralized app store, but I think you can have the best of both worlds. I think about this in the Linux world here, the Snap versus Flatpak debate. Ubuntu wants to push the Snap Store and they want to have centralized control over the apps that people can download. And their arguments would be the same thing: privacy, better trust in the apps that are published there. But I think something like Flatpak or a more decentralized system where there could be more than one app store, I think it could still be good. We would just have to be more cautious about it. I mean, right now in the Flatpak world, I think most people are going to FlatHub anyway, to one source for the majority of the apps they install, because it's a trusted official repository. But I like the option of having a different store to keep that big player, FlatHub, or in this case, the Apple App Store, to keep them in check. Because if they start abusing their power, like charging a lot to have their apps, with their 30% cut, then it'll allow people to easily transition over to a different app store. If FlatHub started doing something that was terrible, developers and users can easily just migrate over to a different app store without having to change that much and then start using them. It kind of keeps the big players in check, but we want the freedom to be able to easily leave them if they hurt the users in some way. If you're enjoying my content, you can subscribe to me on YouTube, PeerTube, follow me on Odyssey. You can also support me on Liberapay, Patreon, and by shopping at Earth Hero. See links in the description below. Twitch bans 2 top creators in struggle with sexually suggestive streams. So 2 prominent ASMR streamers, Amoranth and IndieFox, were banned because they do arguably sexually suggestive ASMR, wearing some TikTok famous leggings known for making your butt look great. And it's an interesting scenario because I'm not sure how I feel about this. So Twitch wrote a month ago, and I quote here, "Being found to be sexy by others is not against our rules," end quote. So this article is arguing that Twitch has put themselves in the position of determining whether a stream is intentionally sexy against rules or merely incidentally sexy. If it seems like to Twitch the streamers are purposefully making their streams sexy, then they'll feel more obligated to banning them. But if it's just ASMR and it's not trying to be sexy, but maybe some users could take it that way, they might be allowed more so than the users with the more obvious intent. Now for this, there's many scenarios. Should these users that are intentionally sexy with their ASMR, they be banned? Should their accounts be hidden more but still allowed on the platform? Part of me says, oh, well, they should be on their own platform that caters to that particular content. But if we start banning content that is viewed as extreme or unconventional, you could also make the same case for political content. Should we say, well, okay, controversial topics are not allowed on the platform, so things that are sexually suggestive, things that are controversial, like topics of abortion, etc., should they be hidden? Should they be banned from the platform altogether? Or even the subject of religion. The part of me that says, okay, ban these people, also thinks, well, then you can justify banning political content. And so that wouldn't be a good thing. But I don't know, I feel like the sweet spot might be to hide the content. I mean, if you're a platform, you don't want to get known for one particular thing. I mean, if you're a platform, I think you should keep balance and have a little bit of everything. I'm not really sure what's the best solution here. It definitely raises some interesting discussion. In other Linux and open source news, the Jingpad Linux tablet crowdfunding campaign is now live. After a few months, the Chinese company Jingling has launched its crowdfunding campaign for the Jingpad A1 Linux tablet on Indiegogo. It looks like it's going to cost about $600 to get this tablet. And looking at the specs, it looks to be very comparable to an iPad, maybe even a Samsung tablet. maybe except for the CPU. I'm not sure how powerful the Unisoc Tiger T7510 CPU is going to be compared to Apple or Samsung for that matter, but everything else looks fairly comparable. It's got an 8000 milliampere battery, 8 gigabytes of RAM, USB-C port, micro SD card slot, 16 megapixel rear camera, 8 megapixel front camera, fingerprint reader, noise canceling mics. I guess those might be options. I'll give credit to this website, OMG Ubuntu, because they list one important thing here. Crowdfunding campaigns are risky. You are not guaranteed to receive anything in return for your money. Think carefully before deciding to back any project. And so that is very good advice, is that this product sounds very almost too good to be true, but it looks like it's legit. But again, with any campaign, just be careful. But you know, the team has released a video here modeling this tablet here, so it looks promising. Steam Play Proton 6.35 has the first release candidate out with lots of changes. What I'm seeing is that certain games that I guess were not available on Proton or on Steam's Proton were unplayable. I could have sworn Civilization 6 was released natively for Linux, but I guess maybe it wasn't working on Windows Proton. But a few big games, I think, like Team Sonic Racing, Resident Evil 2 and 3, Metal Gear Solid, they're all expecting some improved video rendering, so that's pretty good. Nice to see that Proton just keeps getting better and better for making Windows games on Linux a possibility. You have reached the end of this episode. If you like this content, tune in next week for some more awesome tech news.